Hello, everybody. You have tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Hello, everybody. So, how are we feeling today? Yeah, I think that about covers it. So, as we know, the decision by the Banc review for Brendan Dassey came through yesterday, and it came out where it's 4-3 against Brendan. They have basically taken away his writ of habeas corpus, and he is now basically back to being incarcerated in earnest. So, I wanted to say, people, I know that it's a kick to the nuggies, so to speak. It's, isn't ideal. It's more delays. But the thing is, I'm going to show you here today, a lot of people have a serious interest in what happens to Brendan Dassey. They just don't like it. They don't like the look of what happened. They don't like the overtures that come out of Wisconsin regarding it. Just across the board, the Brendan Dassey interrogation / coercion is offensive to people. It's offensive to people. And it's not going to people aren't just going to forget about it. They're not. Sorry, Wisconsin. I know you've been hoping, but it's not going to happen. So what is going to happen is that Brendan's lawyers, they're going to, get themselves together. They're going to file with the Supreme Court. And then what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to start weighing in on this. The reason why that Brendan's case is probably going to have a pretty good chance of getting in front of the Supreme Court is the same reason it had a good chance of getting the Banc review. It is so highly charged, and it's a worldwide phenomenon. Lots of people are paying attention to what happens with Brendan Dassey. That alone makes it so highly charged, it makes it very difficult for the Supreme Court to just cast a blind eye. Especially when as you're going to see Jerry saying here in this video, especially when the amicus briefs start rolling in about, the Brendan Dassey case, the Supreme Court is in my opinion more likely to pay attention right now to this. It's the time. It's the time for this to get talked about. It's the time because so many people are paying attention. If the Supreme Court does issue a decision on this Brendan Dassey case now, lots of people will be paying attention, and it would be prudent for them to do it, because then a lot of people would be aware that the Supreme Court has once again weighed in on wrongful convictions, particularly with juveniles who require special care. And they will now weigh in after the advent of DNA testing and social experiments, research into what causes wrongful convictions and what causes wrongful or false confessions. And due to the Reed technique, because of the Reed technique's unique ability, where they allow you to basically lie to the suspect and tell them lies to mislead them and misdirect them to get them to confess. And so all this stuff that's been coming out since the last time the Supreme Court weighed in on this issue it's significant. It's a lot. And I think all of these factors combined, and there are a lot of other factors that you're going to hear me talk about through this video, are going to really make it very difficult for the Supreme Court to just pass this by. So I think we are going to end up getting a Supreme Court ruling on this. I certainly hope we are going to get that, because it's desperately needed. So what we're going to go into first, folks, is, I read this thing last night, and I was going to do a video last night, but I didn't after I got done reading the petition, the whole 70 pages, and making all my screenshots of the text for you guys to be able to see in the video here, it was really late and tired, and I would have been like this trying to do the video, and you guys deserve better. So I waited till morning. Here we are, bright, chipper, and I'm going to tell you what I think about this. So we're going to start out with the fact that the majority judges, the ones who have decided to rob Brendan Dassey of his writ of habeas corpus, and I say rob because it's fitting. But I'm going to go through this first. Now, I will say this. When I read this decision, last night, it does seem possible to me that even the majority judges want new Supreme Court law, or they want the Supreme Court to weigh in on this subject again. And the reason I say that is because when you read the majority judge's explanation of why they are upholding, or why they are, denying Brendan his writ of habeas corpus, is they're basically just being very sticklers for the AEDPA, and they're basically going through, the strictest technical interpretation of the AEDPA, and using it and applying it to Brendan's confession and stuff. And I'm going to show you, when you see some of the stuff that they put in there, that it's just some of the facts that they put in there. I'm going to show you. You're going to see what they call facts are dubious, in my opinion, highly dubious. And that's, I think, maybe part of it. They may have been writing this in a way for, so that the Supreme Court will take notice that when they read the majority's opinion of how they stuck to AEDPA and how ridiculous it looks, that in itself will make the Supreme Court want to look at it deeper. But if that isn't the case, and they actually believe that poppycock that they put on paper, which Judge Wood does an excellent job of just dismantling. Judge Wood is awesome. Everything that Judge Wood said in her dissent, I was thinking as I was reading Hamilton's, decision, basically. So, we're going to move into first is basically the opening paragraph from Judge Hamilton in his opinion. The opening paragraph. And, he basically, I can just, in one small little paragraph, I can rip him up hard. Rip him apart. The things that he's saying are just ridiculous. So that's where we're going to start. There's going to be quite a few pieces of text to go through today, folks. This is probably going to be a longer video, and I'm sure some of you won't mind because I know the whole Brendan thing is upsetting. So we're going to be thorough. So we're going to move into the first paragraph uttered in Judge Hamilton's opinion here. Here we go. Hamilton Circuit Judge, petitioner Brendan Dassey, confessed on videotape to participating in the 2005 rape and murder of Teresa Halbach and mutilation of her corpse. The Wisconsin State Courts upheld Dassey's convictions for these crimes, finding that his confession was voluntary. Okay, I have a few issues here. Number one, he confessed to a rape and a murder and a mutilation of a corpse, you're saying. But where's the any kind of shred of any kind of proof that a rape took place or anything like that? It's not there. Then, let's talk about the mutilation of her corpse. Do you know that Stephen Avery, Judge Hamilton, was not found guilty of mutilation of a corpse? So, isn't that kind of odd to you, Judge Hamilton? Just saying. Which then brings me to talking about what voluntary means. So as we see right here, done, given, or acting of one's own free will. Okay, keyword there, free will. How is it free will? How is it voluntary when it was all suggested to him beforehand? Okay, so we'll look to a different little word here, volunteer. slightly different variation. A person who freely offers, a keyword freely, offers to take part in an enterprise or undertake a task. Do you recall when Brendan was asking Wiegert, can I be back at school by 129 and all that sort of stuff? That was Brendan essentially saying he wanted to leave and be back at school by 129. The reason why I bring this up, and you'll see why later when I get to the part about how Judge Hamilton talks about this being a non-custodial interview, is that was... They claim that Brendan had the right to leave anytime he wanted. Well, he was indicating right there that he wanted to leave so that he could be back to school by 129. That's what he was indicating. And what did he get told? Oh, probably not. Probably not, basically denying him. So, the way I see it is that in Wiegert telling Brendan that he probably won't be able to get back to school by 129 as Brendan is asking. Because, remember, Brendan is free to go whenever he wants. Remember? You remember how this is what they've been claiming. This is what they've been screaming from the mountaintops. Saying, oh yeah, he was free to leave whenever he wanted. Well, he wanted to leave and be back at school by 129, and you told him no. At that point, you broke that. At that point, you can't claim that it was just a witness interview anymore. He told you, you're saying he had the right to leave whenever he wanted. He told you he wanted to be back at school by 129. You told him no. You see how that works? Okay, so we're going to be moving to that later, obviously, when I get to the whole thing about whether this thing was custodial or not. But anyways, some factors would tend to support a finding that Dassey's confession was not voluntary. His youth, his limited intellectual ability, some suggestions by the interrogators, their broad assurances to a vulnerable suspect. Some suggestions, really? Only some? I can only laugh at that. Now we're going to move on to the fact that Judge Hamilton, and mainly Judge Hamilton's writing this opinion, but obviously for the majority judges, where he talks about the reasonable fact finding from the state court and the appeals court. Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous. Facts are so far removed from Brendan's case, it's ridiculous. But anyways. After the state courts found the confession voluntary, a federal district court and a divided panel of this court found that the state court's decision was unreasonable and that Dassey was entitled to a writ of habeas corpus. We granted Banc review to consider the application of the deferential standards of 28 U.S.C. and the implications of the panel decision for interrogations of juvenile suspects. The state court's finding that Dassey's confession was voluntary was not beyond fair debate, but we conclude it was reasonable. We reversed the grant of Dassey's petition for writ of habeas corpus. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, first of all, Laura Nyrider made it very clear that this was not in regard to all juvenile suspects. I mean, she argued very clearly, very eloquently. So, I mean, like I was saying, Laura couldn't have made it any clearer that this was not about all juveniles in the area of the Seventh Circuit Court. No, it was about very specific cases that involved these very suggestible, very young kids in that finite amount of cases. And it bugs me. I mean, I can understand Wisconsin deliberately misinterpreting it over and over again. But to watch a judge deliberately misinterpret that over and over again is a little more disturbing to me. So, it's crazy. So, we're going to move into the next one here now. Section 2254D provides that a state court conviction cannot be overturned unless the state court's adjudication of a federal claim on the merits, 1, resulted in a decision that was contrary to or involved an unreasonable application of clearly established federal law as determined by the Supreme Court of the United States, or, number 2, resulted in a decision that was based on an reasonable determination of the facts in light of the evidence presented in the state court proceeding. And that's what I'm talking about here. The finding of fact that Hamilton keeps trying to hang his hat on in this decision opinion, basically, the finding of the fact in Brendan's case is ridiculous in the extreme. Seriously. All right, so, I mean, let's analyze this a little bit here. The finding of the facts in Brendan's case. You mean the coerced confession that everybody's complaining about? Seriously? Where all the crucial facts were fed to him? Okay, he by the way, he wasn't first to say he saw body parts in the fire. That was suggested to him, and then he spit it back. Everything that Judge Hamilton says in this opinion, it's like I'm just at times just going, what was he looking at? I don't know. I really don't. I mean, there's no way. Every crucial thing was fed to him, suggested to him beforehand, and when it's suggested to you, I'm just saying. I mean, my opinion is that it makes a huge case for the fact that it's not exactly voluntary or volunteered when it's suggested to you first. Just my opinion. But then you move on to the other stuff. Like, I mean, what else do we have? Oh, I know. We have that phone call between Brendan and Barb on the prison phone. You know, the one that was created after his own lawyer got a private investigator to go in and prove just exactly how easy it was a second time to bully Brendan into saying what you want him to say. Goes in there and proves that for a second time, and then throws him back to the wolves, Wiegert and Fassbender, who then tell Brendan, they bully him some more, get some more, do the same things they did before to make Brendan start guessing again, and saying, in the hopes that he'll say something that they can use, that they didn't like from the previous March 1st confession, you know what I mean? And then they tell him to call his mom and tell her, or they're going to call her and tell her. And, I mean, just messing with the kid's head more than they already, beyond what they've already done. I mean, these two guys, man, have no conscience. No conscience. I can't believe it. But then that's where you get that phone call. And the prosecution was playing that phone call. They played it 3 times during his trial. They played it, I believe, once during opening argument, once after Brendan's testimony, once after the psychologist or whatever that testified as to Brendan's suggestibility and that sort of stuff. And then they played it one more time during their closing arguments. That is fruit of a poisonous tree. That is fruit of Len Kaczynski throwing his client to the wolves. Ineffective assistance of counsel, hands down. There's no saying that it's not a serious offense. What Len Kaczynski did is indefensible. If you don't think it's indefensible, I could pull you up an audio clip of Luke Berg for Wisconsin himself telling you that Len Kaczynski is indefensible. Dassey early police interviews. Police investigators spoke with a number of Avery relatives in early November, including an hour-long interview of his 16-year-old nephew, Brendan Dassey, who lived close by. Dassey said he had seen Halbach taking pictures at the salvage yard on the afternoon of October 31st, but he resisted the suggestion that he had entered Avery's home. At that time, he provided no other useful information. Now, remember that he was with Blaine, and Blaine never saw this. He never saw Teresa taking pictures. But anyway, several months later, investigators received word that Dassey had been crying uncontrollably and had lost 40 pounds of weight. They proceeded to interview him a total of 3 times on February 27th of 2006. In these voluntary witness interviews, it became clear that Dassey knew much more about Teresa's murder. Dassey was not in custody on February 27th. He signed an initial the Miranda waiver, and his mother consented, though she did not sit in. In those interviews, Dassey admitted that on October 31st, he had gone over to Avery's trailer around 9 p.m. and helped with a bonfire. He told police that he had seen parts of a human body in the fire. He also said that Avery had threatened to hurt him if he spoke to the police. Oh, he knew much more, would we? No, he knew what was suggested to him, what he was told. So, ridiculous. Anyways, when the police asked about a pair of bleach-stained jeans they had learned about from another family member, Dassey admitted that he had helped Avery clean up a spill in the garage floor late that night. But Dassey claimed to have had nothing to do with Teresa's death. So, this is, where we're going to start getting into whether or not these interviews were custodial or not. The judge noted Dassey's age and observed that he had an IQ level in the low average to borderline range. The judge noted that school records showed that Dassey was in regular track classes but had some special education help. The judge also noted Dassey's lack of a criminal record, the non-custodial nature of the February 27th and March 1st interviews, and Dassey's Miranda waivers from both days. The judge found that Dassey knew he could stop answering questions and knew he could leave that room at any time on February 27th, and that he repeatedly indicated his continuing interest in speaking with the police on March 1st. The judge found that both Dassey and his mother consented in the interview on March 1st. The judge also quoted several of the investigators' admonitions to tell the truth, including, "Honesty here is the thing that's going to help you," and "Honesty is the thing that will set you free," upon which Dassey relies so heavily now. Okay, let's go back here. I'm so happy that this judge noted all of those laundry list of issues up there. Are you kidding me? I'm so happy he noted them. Did he give it special care? That's the question. The question is whether it was given special care. Noting it or mentioning it, who knows how much care it was given? It's being barely glanced over, essentially. So that's the point there. But then we move past that and look at what I was talking about earlier about whether this thing was custodial or not. Okay, on March 1st, they're saying that he was continuously indicating his willingness to be there and talking to investigators. Okay, what about what I just said about the fact that he tells Mark Wiegert, "Am I going to be back to school by 1:29? Clearly stating, in no uncertain terms, "I want to be back to school by 1:29. He is denied. That proves that this was not an interview. It was never an interview. And they need to cut that crap, because that's one of the things that most pisses me off about this. This whole pretense that it was an interview. No, you denied him. You said he was free to leave. He said he wanted to leave. You didn't let him leave. That proves that this was not just an interview. So, that's all, that's painfully clear there. Obvious. So, now we're going to move into the uncorroborated nature of Brendan's confession. And all of the facts, or all of the problems that brings into the situation. Dassey said he then saw Teresa alive, naked, and handcuffed to Avery's bed. Dassey said he went inside at Avery's invitation and had a soda while Avery told him that he had raped Teresa. Dassey said at Avery's urging he had then raped Teresa, having intercourse against her will as she was bound to the bed, as she protested and begged him to stop. After the rape, Dassey reported he then watched television with Avery for a while. In Dassey's telling, he next helped Avery subdue and kill Teresa and move her to the garage. In response to questioning and prodding, Dassey told a confusing story about these critical events. Dassey said that Avery stabbed Teresa with a large knife, that her handcuffs were removed, and that she was tied up with rope. He also said Avery cut off her hair with a large knife, that he, Dassey, cut her throat with the same knife, and that at some point Avery choked or punched her. All these events reportedly happened by 6 or 6:30 p.m. The details and sequence of events changed repeatedly, however, as investigators pressed Dassey for more details. This portion of the interrogation provides the most support for Dassey's claim that his confession was both involuntary and unreliable. For example, because the recovered remnants of Teresa's skull contained trace amounts of lead, the investigators believed that Teresa had been shot in the head. They were eager for Dassey to describe what else he had been done to her head, besides cutting and punching. In this exchange, Dassey did not provide the answer they were looking for. He offered what seemed like guesses. The investigators abandoned their vague admonitions to tell the truth. They lost patience and blurted out, "Mark Wiegert, all right, I'm just going to come out and ask you who shot her in the head." Now, this is one of the most damning things, really, for Fassbender and Wiegert, because they don't bother trying to tell him to tell the truth because they know he's floundering. He has no clue what they want, and he's guessing, but he's guessing wrong, and they just know he's going to continue to guess wrong. So Wiegert has to just come out and say, who shot her, so that Brendan can say, "Oh, Stephen," or whoever, so that Brendan can give a clear answer to that. And by doing so, he feeds Brendan that crucial fact that he should never have fed. All right, now, who buys that crap right there about they go in, rape Teresa, all that, and then go back out and watch TV in the living room for a while? I mean, seriously, seriously, are you kidding me? You just done this thing. You're certainly not going to want to be getting caught for it, but you're just going to leave this screaming girl in your bedroom while you go out in the front room with your nephew and watch TV for a little while? I mean, really? Are we? I mean, this is like, are we in the realm of reality anymore here, Wisconsin? Seriously. I mean, who would do that? Who would take the risk that somebody would hear her and come investigating it, and is increasing the chances that you're going to get caught doing it? I mean, it just doesn't make logical sense. It's ridiculous. So, I don't know. I just had to say that because I was just sitting there when I read that, I was just going like, "Are you kidding? You got to be kidding." But they're not kidding. I don't know. Well, or they're just writing it this way so that it draws more attention. I mean, it does honestly caught my eye a lot. Kept reading this thing going, I can't believe that he wrote that. I can't believe he wrote it. Anyway. So now, the next thing that I can't believe he wrote, seriously, I cannot believe that they included it, but you guys have seen me talk about it. You've seen me talk about it many times. He is actually using it here to be as a reinforcement of the fact that Brendan Dassey was resisting investigators. It's the control question, people. It's the freaking control question. The one that Brendan Dassey flip-flops on and proves exactly how suggestible he is. He's using it here as proof that Brendan isn't suggestible. I'm not kidding. You'll see. Signaling that the investigators did not overwhelm his will, Dassey resisted repeated suggestions by both investigators that he and Avery had used wires and cables hanging in the garage to torture Teresa. The investigators also tested Dassey's suggestibility. They told him falsely that Teresa had a tattoo on her stomach and asked if he had seen it. Here's the exchange. Fassbender, did she have any scars, marks, tattoos, stuff like that you can remember? I don't remember any tattoos. Okay. We know that Teresa had a tattoo on her stomach. Do you remember that? Brendan shakes his head no and says, Fassbender, do you disagree with me when I say that? In other words, do you disagree with me when I say that she had a tattoo on her stomach? To which Brendan answers, no, I don't disagree with you. I don't know where it was. And Fassbender says, okay, that is clearly flip-flopping and going along with what Fassbender said. He started out saying, I don't remember a tattoo, saying, and shaking his head no. But then when Fassbender asks, do you disagree with me? Brendan should have said, yes, I disagree with you. That should have been the answer, yes. Had Brendan said, yes, but I don't know where it was, then we'd be a whole different story. Okay, so For all of these reasons, Judge Hamilton and the majority judges over there at the Seventh Circuit Court, I respectfully dissent. With gusto. So, I will also say, my good buddy, Paul Capaldi, over in Scotland, he's going to be doing a video about this as well, only he's not going to be nearly as nice about it as I am, or at least I've been assured that that's the situation, and I applaud it. You go, Paul. You let him have it. I just prefer to look at this in a different way. I prefer to look at it, in the way that, I don't want to attack these judges, for their opinion. I want to go ahead and hashtag stay classy for Brendan Dassey. Brendan Dassey's now got to move to the next step, and that would be the Supreme Court. And we all should want for Brendan's supporters to be being classy. We want the Supreme Court justices to see that Brendan's supporters are a classy bunch, people that are not troublemakers, people that are respectful. We want the judges at the Supreme Court to see that, not a bunch of people mad and angry and doing spiteful things, and that sort of stuff. And so that's why I always say hashtag stay classy for Brendan Dassey, because it's just we don't want to seem like an unruly bunch of jerks and stuff. I think it's important. I really do. I would also say that I sometimes, when I think about this, I think about some of my favorite fan fiction, and one of them is an author named Stephen Donaldson, who wrote a book called Lord Fowle's Bane. And when I think about this, sometimes I think about those books, and I think about Lord Fowle, and I think about the Wisconsin kind of legal, DOJ legal political structure there that kind of together as a unit, kind of embody the whole idea of Lord Fowle, the despiser. I mean, shoot, Kratz and Fallon alone really embody the spirit, in my mind, of the despiser. And it's important for us, for those of you who understand what I'm saying right now, who have read the book that I'm talking about, and it's important for us, as Brendan Dassey's supporters, to not participate in the ritual of desecration that was performed by Kevin Landwaster in those books. So, I want to go ahead and move into now the dissent. The first dissent is going to be from Chief Judge Wood, and she really lets it be known exactly what she feels the majority kind of got wrong. She does it respectfully, but she's not sugarcoating it. She's just being very plain and very blunt about how she feels that this got miscarried, that this thing is just not, that she feels that something slipped through the fingers of the justice system here, essentially. So, but I think with Judge Wood, with her dissent, and with also Judge Rovner's dissent that's also there, two very strong dissents. I mean, they are very strong. I mean, and you're going to see. I think all these things are going to weigh together, and they're going to all add up, along with all the amicus briefs that we're going to see roll in, like I'm going to show you here in a minute. With all the stuff that's going to come in, I think the Supreme Court is going to be compelled to really give Brendan Dassey's case a serious look, and I truly believe that. Like I said, it's such a worldwide phenomenon. There's so many people paying attention. The case is so highly charged that it's hard for me to imagine that the Supreme Court is just going to pass it by. Just doesn't seem very likely. So we're going to go ahead now and start moving into the dissent. Wood, Chief Judge, and Rovner and Williams, Circuit Judges, dissenting. Psychological coercion questions to which the police furnished the answers. and ghoulish games of 20 questions in which Brendan Dassey guessed over and over again before he landed on the correct story, the one that police wanted, led to the confession that furnished the only serious evidence supporting his murder conviction in the Wisconsin courts. Turning a blind eye to these glaring faults, the Banc majority has decided to deny Dassey's petition for a writ of habeas corpus. They justify this travesty of justice as something compelled by the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, the AEDPA. If the writ, as limited by AEDPA, were nothing more than a dead letter, perhaps they would be correct. But it is not. Instead, as the Supreme Court wrote in Harrington v. Richter, the writ of habeas corpus stands as a safeguard against imprisonment of those held in violation of the law. It is, the court went on to say, a guard against extreme malfunctions in the state criminal justice systems. That's powerful stuff. She's basically trying to say that the whole spirit of what the writ of habeas corpus is for cases like this one, and that the majority is really dropping the ball. As the district court and the panel majority recognize, we have before us just such an extreme malfunction. Dassey at the relevant time was 16 years old and had an IQ in the low 80s. His confession was coerced, and thus it should not have been admitted into evidence. And even if we were to overlook the coercion, the confession is so riddled with input from the police that its use violates the due process. Dassey will spend the rest of his life in prison because of the injustice this court has decided to leave unredressed. I respectfully dissent. So, I mean, there you have it, where Judge Wood is basically saying it. You know, this confession is just riddled with, you know, input from the police. The police officers or the investigators telling Brendan what they're looking for, and then basically letting him guess until he guesses right. But they're giving him the information beforehand because they know he's willing to please them. You know, they know. They absolutely know. This trying to feign that they didn't know how you know, easily suggestible that Brendan was. Yeah, whatever. I ain't buying it. I don't think many people are, to be perfectly honest. So we're gonna move into now where she talks about the basically whether or not the state courts really gave due deference to Brendan's age and suggestibility, and basically whether or not the special care that is required by the Supreme Court was actually applied here. So we're going to move into that now. To be sure, Harrington v. Richter holds generally that federal courts may not draw any dispositive conclusions from a state court's silence. But, by the same token, the state court's silence cannot be leveraged into any assurance that the court went the extra mile required by the U.S. Supreme Court and gave Dassey's age and limited mental ability particular care. The majority's finding to the contrary has no support in the record. Worse, the majority writes off, in a footnote, Dassey's extreme suggestibility by casting doubt on the applicability of a formal test, the Good-Johnson test. As the painstaking review of the record reflected in Judge Robner's panel opinion reveals, even a layperson could see readily that Dassey yielded to any suggestion the person in authority made. More generally, no court is entitled to pick and choose which evidence to consider when evaluating the totality of circumstances. Clearly established Supreme Court law decisions compelled the Wisconsin court to pay special attention to Dassey's age and intellectual abilities, including his high level of suggestibility. Its failure to do so is one reason why it erroneously concluded that Dassey's confession was not coerced. It's absolutely right. I mean, the fact that the majority judges can look at that confession and say that it looks okay to them is really mind-boggling, to be perfectly honest. The kid is guessing the whole time. It's, I mean, painfully obvious. So you see what Judge Wood was saying there that I thought was interesting. She's saying that, yes, the Supreme Court has told us that we can't necessarily assume that because a state court doesn't give a whole lot of mention to something, as that you can't take that as to say that they didn't give it consideration, or that they didn't give it the proper consideration just because they didn't go on about it, so to speak, in the opinion. But what Judge Wood is saying is that, but by the same token, because there isn't more about it in the opinion, we can't be sure that it was given that. So she's saying that that coin can flip either way, that because it wasn't talked about that much, we can't say whether it was or wasn't given proper, deference. And it's a fair point, because when you look at the totality of circumstances really around this, it really doesn't look like it was given the proper deference. It wasn't given the proper consideration. It appears. And so that's why when everything begins to add up, that laundry list that I was talking about earlier, that the judge in the case had, noted, it's like, oh, thanks for making those notes, Judge. It seems like they didn't really matter to you, but you noted them. Thanks. It's just like, Jesus. Anyways, so I totally get what Judge Wood is saying here. And now we're gonna move into where basically Judge Wood starts just talking about all the red flags here, and how she can't believe that her colleagues in the majority could just ignore these things. Nevertheless, first the state, and now the on-bank majority, have culled a sentence here and there and have attempted to craft a coherent confession from them. The video recording of the police interrogation of Dassey, however, tells another story, one that is diametrically opposed to the state's tidy and selective summary. Among the many red flags are the following. Dassey's answers to questions frequently change at the detective's prodding. The officers laid a trail of crumbs, indeed, large signposts to the confession they sought. Whenever Dassey went off course, the investigators would shepherd him back into the desired direction, at times with the use of fatherly assurances and gestures, and frequently by questioning his honesty. On both February 27th and March 1st, the detectives misleadingly conveyed to Dassey, whose ability to think abstractly was minimal, that his honesty would be the only thing that will set him free. Through subsequent questioning, it became clear that honesty meant what the investigators wanted to hear. Yep, 100% agree with Judge Wood there. Judge Wood's sharp. I really like her. I liked her in the oral arguments too. I just thought she was super sharp. Okay, so now we're going to move into Judge Wood basically stating the three principles here that the Wisconsin State Court failed really to give proper consideration. So we'll see those right now. The Wisconsin Court of Appeals failed reasonably to apply in any meaningful way at least three principles that the Supreme Court has clearly established. Number 1, special care for juvenile confessions. Number 2, consideration of the totality of circumstances. And, most importantly, number 3, prohibition of psychologically coercive tactics. This led to the kind of extreme malfunction in the adjudication of Dassey's case for which Section 2254 D1 provides a remedy. By turning a blind eye to these problems, the majority has essentially read habeas corpus relief out of the books. That's a pretty heavy statement she makes there. She's basically saying that the majority is basically writing habeas corpus relief out of the books with that decision. So strong words there from Judge Wood. And like I said, I think Judge Wood is right on it, man. She also had a thing in here that she included in the decision, and I'll leave the link to the decision below the video here, along with probably Paul Capaldi's video when he eventually makes it. But she ended up adding in this whole, like, it was like a diagram where she showed like all of the pertinent or most damning points that the state looks to, and then she made a column for why that statement was nullified or didn't have any real credibility, and then she has another column that cites the quote, or basically how that piece of information got discovered, or what happened in that actual conversation. So it's interesting, and she creates it, and it takes up about probably 9 pages that she has this diagram. It's interesting, so if you want, you should go check it out. It's around pages like 40 to 50 or something like that, I believe it was. So, but it was interesting, and she's thorough, very thorough. So now we're done with Judge Wood's dissent, and now we're going to move into Judge Robner's dissent. And Judge Robner's dissent is quite brilliant as well. It really centers around the whole thing that we live in the modern age, people. DNA is proving that people falsely confess a lot. 1 in 4 murder cases where there's a confession involves a false confession. 1 in 4, 25%, people. That's not a small number. That's not an insignificant, percentage. So Judge Robner focuses here on what DNA in the criminal, what we're learning in the criminal justice system now, and how judges and courts are really being kind of thick, and slow to adopt and understand a lot of these social research into the Reed technique that's been going on, and what DNA testing has been beginning to prove to us. And she's just basically laying it out there saying, people, we need to come into the 21st century here. Why are we still acting like we're in the dark ages? Basically, paraphrasing. Oh, actually, before we move into Judge Robner's dissent real quick, I want to show you a couple things. For those of you who are, maybe aren't on Twitter and stuff like that, I want to suggest some people on Twitter for you to create. If you don't have an account, create one and follow these particular people I'm going to show you right now. They are absolutely stellar. They are constantly posting stuff that are from the documents, from the investigation documents and stuff like that. Proof. Like whenever Ken Kratz comes out talking about some new lie or some new BS that he's trying to peddle, like recently with talking about the deceptive editing done by the filmmakers, when he's the biggest deceiver of them all. You know what I mean? And you're going to find that these people I'm going to show you right now are the ones that are the very first to jump on him and point out all of his BS. And they are good at it. And not beyond that, a few of them just constantly, multiple posts a day, very smart stuff, very, very smart observations that they find when they're reading the documents. Just amazing stuff. These people, if you want to keep up with the case, but but this whole decision's got you down and you don't know, well, when you want to come check back in, you check in with these people I'm about to show you, because when you look at their Twitter feeds, you're going to know what's going on with this case right now. So I'm going to show you that right now before we move into Judge Robner's dissent. So this is 6 people on Twitter that I really follow, quite often. The one that it's mousing over right there, that's TikTok Manitowoc. He's a Redditor. He is sharp. Man, the guy posts so many things that are just hugely thought-provoking. He's, in the documents. He posts a lot of documents, so if you want to get caught up on things, he's one place to go. 7 Pairs of Panties, another Redditor. Smart stuff. Tracy Coe, always posting about Brendan. She's a very huge supporter of Brendan. So I suggest when you want news about Brendan, she's a good place to go. Pub Tender there, TS. Whenever Ken Kratz comes out with some crap or some BS, you can count on her to be right there to shove it down his throat, to cram it back down his throat. She is a huge supporter and very smart. And then we got Foghaze up there, another Redditor, very smart stuff. I mean, lots of digs into the documents and puts them out there for you to see. And another one there with Mystic Jinx. Absolute phenomenal supporter, phenomenal researcher. These people here, if you're following these 6 counts, you're gonna get a lot of information about the case in a short period of time. And by following these 6, you're going to discover others that are also very smart and very sharp, and you'll be able to get yourself caught up on the case at times when you need to. So go check them out. Funny story about TikTok Manitowoc, everybody. that picture there, it was created by the SAIG Reddit community. They were making fun of him. They were trying to make fun of him. Well, because they don't like him. He posts, he says a lot of smart things and shoots a lot of holes in the prosecution's theory, and he puts up the proof to back it up, and they don't like him. They would like to silence him. In fact, they tried. They kicked him off of Reddit. He made one tiny mistake, and they kicked him off of Reddit. But they made that picture for him, and they made it as a way to embarrass him. And when they showed it to him, he liked it so much, and I agree, because I think it's hilarious. I think it's absolutely hilarious. But he liked it so much, he stole it from him and made it his profile picture on Twitter. Oh my Lord, funny stuff, people. So that's TikTok Manitowoc. He's like I said, he's definitely one you want to follow. 7 Pairs of Panties, Exonerate, and Mystic Jinx. You're talking about some very hardcore Redditors. They always have the best information, I'm telling you. So those are accounts that you would want to follow on Twitter. They're going to get you some good information quick whenever you're looking to check in on the case and find out what's going on. Okay, so I'm showing you where to get it. Obviously, me too. I didn't leave mine there, but at the end of the video, I'll put you up my Twitter thing so that you guys can go and follow me if you haven't already. So I'll put that at the end of the video for you folks. Now, we're going to move into Judge Robner's dissent. Like as I said before, Judge Robner's all about saying, "Hey, look, we need the courts to come into the 21st century here. We need to start looking at what's going on around us. DNA is proving a lot of things, that false confessions are happening a lot more than we previously thought, and blah blah blah. Basically, we need to move into the modern age." So, and that's the main theme of hers, and I think it's a good one. I think it plays well, and I think it resonates. So here we go. Robner, Circuit Judge, and Wood, Chief Judge, and Williams, Circuit Judge, dissenting. I continue to believe, as I explained in the panel opinion, and as Chief Judge Wood's dissent so persuasively argues, that the state court failed to fulfill the Supreme Court's mandate to review juvenile confessions with special care, and unreasonably held that Dassey's confession was voluntary. And for all of the reasons upon which Chief Judge Wood has expounded, and those set forth in the original panel opinion in Dassey versus Dittman, I too respectfully dissent. I write separately simply to point out the chasm between how courts have historically understood the nature of coercion and confessions, and what we know now about coercion and the advent of DNA profiling and current social science research. So she's basically saying right there that there is new data out there, new proof that our ideas about false confessions are outdated. We need to move into the modern era, and that's what the whole theme really of her opinion is. Unfortunately, 4 members of the 7-member Banc panel of this court do not agree, a decision that I believe has worked a profound injustice. Nevertheless, I hope to convince my colleagues throughout the courts that reform of our understanding of coercion is long overdue. When conducting a totality of circumstances review, most courts' evaluations of coercion still are based largely on outdated ideas about human psychology and rational decision-making. It is time to bring our understanding of coercion into the 21st century. And I think that there's a good chance that that's going to happen, people. Because, well, let me show you a few things that Jerry Buting said on Twitter. Alright, so this came from Jerry Buting. There will be many amicus briefs. For those of you who don't remember, the amicus brief was filed by Wicklander, Zawalski, and stuff about how they used Brendan's interrogation as a what not to do. Anyway, more of those types of things will be filed with SCOTUS, supporting Stephen Drizzen and Nyrider in their efforts to get a Supreme Court review of this travesty on justice. I'll write one myself if necessary. Retweet this if it's time to end the illusion of justice in America. Then he goes on to say about Robner. Robner's dissent notes need for the court to update understanding of psychological coercion. Since DNA proves innocence do confess. SCOTUS has not reevaluated police coercion since the advent of DNA and social science research on the Reid technique. Now is the time, and Brendan is the case. So, you can see that there's a case to be made. The Supreme Court really hasn't addressed this issue since the advent of the DNA testing and what it's showing us. And how many people, this disturbing number of 1 in 4 confessions in murder cases is a false one. That's a significant enough number to be disturbing. So we certainly need the Supreme Court to give these circuit courts something to work with here, especially with young kids like Brendan was, especially as suggestible in the learning disabilities that he had. I mean, all of these things, I keep hearing that totality of circumstances thing being spouted by those judges, and I just keep going, yeah, the totality of circumstances suggests that it's a farce. I mean, but yeah, I mean, the totality of circumstances, this all needs to be addressed. The Supreme Court needs to give a new decision to really give the courts of America somewhere to look for more recent information from the Supreme Court when it comes to for at least for juveniles. Hopefully, with Brendan's case, we can hopefully get something for juveniles, and that'll be a start. That will be a start. You know what I mean? So that's where we've got to be headed with this. But at least it's going to come down from the Supreme Court itself, and it's gonna be that's it. That's going to be it. And then the circuit courts and everybody else is going to have to kowtow and do as the Supreme Court wishes. And that ultimately it's unfortunate for Brendan that he has to sit in jail a little longer. It's a bummer, and it's a real kick in the teeth. But ultimately, in the end, because of Brendan, and because we all clearly saw what happened to him and we're not willing to just sit down and let it go and let it be, that Brendan is eventually going to hopefully have law in his name coming down from the Supreme Court to help protect future juveniles, especially ones like him in the position that he was in the future. And hopefully after that, if we can get that to happen from the Supreme Court, hopefully in the coming years, the Supreme Court will choose to take on a few other cases where they can deal with how the courts evaluate false confessions and stuff like that with adults as well. Because like I said, 1 in 4 confessions in murder cases. That's a disturbing number. It's a highly disturbing number. So we're going to move into the rest of Robner's opinion here, where she's basically, as I said before, telling, or stating in her opinion that the courts, all of her colleagues in all of the courts really do need to start getting on board and seeing the importance of this social research that's going on into the Reid technique and what DNA is teaching us. We need to pay attention. So here we go. Peer-reviewed studies confirm that jurors tend to have hard-to-dislodge beliefs that a suspect who is innocent could not be manipulated into confessing. And in fact, this false notion is precisely what the state implored the jurors in Dassey's trial to believe, arguing in closing that people who are innocent don't confess. We know, however, that this statement is unequivocally incorrect. Innocent people do in fact confess, and they do so with shocking regularity. As of June 7, 2016, the National Registry of Exonerations had collected data on 1,810 exonerations in the United States since 1989. That number, as of December 4, 2017, is 2,132. And that data includes 227 cases of innocent people who falsely confessed. This research indicates that false confessions, defined as in which indisputably innocent individuals confess to crimes they did not commit, occur in approximately 25% of homicide cases. Okay, 25% is 1 in 4. That's where you've been hearing me say that during this video. That's 1 in 4. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a really disturbing percentage of people there that are innocent and confessing. What occurred here was the interrogation of an intellectually impaired juvenile. Dassey was subjected to myriad psychologically coercive techniques, but the state court did not review his interrogation with the special care required by the Supreme Court precedent. His confession was not voluntary and his conviction should not stand. And yet, an impaired teenager has been sentenced to life in prison. I view this as a profound miscarriage of justice. I respectfully dissent. And that's the end of. That's how Judge Rovner chose to leave it at the end of hers, and I gotta agree with her, to be perfectly honest. So there you go. That's me on Twitter, everybody. If you want to go follow me when you if you haven't created a Twitter account and you're considering it now that I've suggested it, there's me. That's how you can easily find me at @irikose_on_MAM. So that's. Obviously, I post a lot of stuff about the case. I also post a lot about the Scott Davis case, which is not strictly related to making a murder of Brendan or Stephen, but I do post about it a fair amount. So that's where you can find me. And like I said, if you follow me and those other people I was talking to you about, you're going to find other people that post some pretty good stuff, like Scooby the Dog. There's a few of them. There's a few of them out there that are posting some really good stuff out there that I think a lot more people really do need to see. That they don't have, if they don't have the time to go in and read the documents, which are considerable. So it's understandable. So that's going to do it for the video here, folks. Judge Wood and Judge Rovner very handily, respectfully dissented with their colleagues in the majority there at the 7th Circuit. And honestly, I think that Judge Hamilton wrote, his decision there is, you can literally fill it with holes. And Judge Wood does. Judge Wood literally does in her opinion, in her dissent. The diagram she creates, she just takes a Tommy gun and just through the whole story that Hamilton leads you through in his decision. So it's interesting stuff, but I think we're headed to the Supreme Court. I think that this case is really charged. It's got, by what I mean by that, it's charged, that means it's got a lot of people behind it. It's got a lot of people that are interested in it and what happens to it. There's a lot of people following it. So that in and of itself makes it something that gives the Supreme Court something to think about, because they know if they give a ruling on this, that it's going to resonate, that lots of people are going to be paying attention, and so the law that they create, or the law that they maintain, whichever happens, whatever they end up deciding, that lots of people are going to hear it, and therefore it's going to reach. It's not going to be easily forgotten. And honestly, they know right now that this is a hot button issue. Interrogations and false confessions and wrongful convictions are all getting talked about a lot right now because of what DNA is proving. It's proving that the way that investigators deviate from the proper way of investigating creates these problems. And once a man is convicted, even if he is one of the lucky ones that manages to prove his innocence, it ends up being 10 to 15 years down the line, and it's so much of their life is now gone. And how do you even try to pay that back? it's I mean, it's an unfortunate problem, but then what do you have? Oh, you have these states now that want to, like Wisconsin, that want to take this attitude of, oh, well, who cares about the ones that are in prison? Let's make sure we prevent. Well, they talk a big game about making sure we prevent wrongful convictions and false confessions in the future. Like I say, they talk a big game, but basically what it comes down to is they don't have to pay. And that's what it comes down to. So that's going to be about it for this video. And when I say when they don't have to pay, I mean they don't have to pay for a bunch of people getting out of prison and suing them because they were wrongfully convicted. And they also don't really care about making sure that they prevent them in the future. And that is actually the really, really sad part. They talk a big game and they make a big show, but I don't see it. I don't really see it happening there. So, like I said, question that whole Wisconsin political structure, the DOJ, all of it. It's all a mess, a huge mess. It's, infested, as it were. So that's going to be about it, folks. We'll see you later. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe.